Hey everyone, welcome to Nurses with Attitude. In today's episode, Leanne and I discuss why we became nurses, kind of the journey of where we are today in nursing, why we believe in what we believe in, and why we're going to be doing this podcast moving forward. So, from Leanne and I, hope you enjoy our first episode. So, today I was thinking for the episode, because this is our first episode,
Yay!
that we just kind of, discuss who we are and, why we're here today and kind of what our goals with this podcast is.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, we both started at the same place in our nursing career and we've both definitely blossomed. And yeah, let's talk about it.
It's crazy that now we're both not in the same place that we started, and we're in different parts of Canada.
Yeah, and
Completely.
we really haven't started that long ago in the grand scheme of things. We're both still technically new grad nurses. I don't know. I still feel that way sometimes.
I would say COVID definitely took away the experience of edging our ways up into the nursing and the healthcare field in general. And it feels like for me, I've been a nurse for at least 10 years, but it's only been 4.
Yeah, I would agree to an extent. I feel like COVID sort of, we were really thrown in. And so it sort of hazed a lot of the excitement that you would feel as a new grad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I'm a bit bitter because I come from a long-term care background, and that was a bit, hit the hardest during COVID, and it was a tough experience. But yeah, we're on the other side now, so.
I definitely want to talk about that later too, because I wonder if we would have had the same feelings if COVID didn't happen. I
Yeah.
wonder a lot of these issues that we face, COVID exaggerated it.
Yeah.
Crazy. But I feel like those were problems day one too.
Yeah,
So
for sure. I definitely think we could make a full episode on this.
100%, 100%. But for now, let's start with meeting at Algonquin College in Ottawa.
Yeah, so Joe and I were in the same nursing program, and that's sort of where we met at Algonquin in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And yeah, we became friends during nursing school, and there was a group of 3 or 4 of us that were pretty tight all through school, and we had a lot of placements together and things like that. But yeah, we really only met about 4 years ago. We graduated in 2019, yeah. So yeah, I guess not even 4 years.
No, I think it was more than 4 years because it was 2018 when we started.
Oh yeah. So the program would have began January. Anyway, minor details, but yeah, so we went through school together, and then when we graduated, Joe, why don't you tell them a little bit about the avenue you took and some of the jobs that you did?
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy because me and you had that same placement on the rehabilitation unit, and the one day that Leanne didn't come, two people had passed away, and they were both my patients. And I remember telling you about this, and you're pretty upset. You're like, man, the one day I missed a clinical placement.
Of course, and back then we were so excited for something that wasn't within our daily routine, something like a death or, of course we'd never wish that on anyone, but as a student you want to experience all these things, and the patients really dictate what you get to learn when you're in a placement. So yeah, I was pretty upset about that, to say the least, but lots of experience with that since.
Exactly. It kind of hit me right in the face. One of the deaths was a palliative care death, and one of the deaths wasn't planned at all. It just happened. She had a vagal response on the toilet, and it hit me in the face because it had happened. And obviously, you have your training, and it's a little true, what they say when you're in those situations. You kind of resort to what you've learned in school, and you kind of don't think about it, which was kind of cool. Because I think we did the best that we could as a team in that situation. But when I came home and for the following weeks, and this was I think our last semester of nursing as well, it hit me on the face hard of I was 22, 23 at the time, and I was like, wow, I just witnessed 2 people die, 2 completely different deaths, two completely different stories within like 5 minutes of each other. I literally walked out of one room, went into the other, and the second patient had died. Um, and yeah, like it hit me in the face. So the direction that I went was actually towards a palliative care direction, and I started doing home care, and not kind of like the nursing home care where you go and you do visits and you're there for an hour then you leave. Home care where you're there for like 12 hours a day or sometimes 8 hours a day too. And then I took the long term care approach as well. Went there, and then I kind of grew as a palliative care nurse and adopted the palliative care approach to like my care,
Yeah.
and that kind of led me through like that period of my life. The
Yeah,
first,
I think you really took something that was quite shocking in your education and then grew from it. You know, like you really leaned into that, and that obviously started your career and the jobs that you chose.
100%. And it
Yeah.
was funny because, like Leanne said earlier, we're also excited when we're in nursing school to get like the most exciting experiences. So when we were doing our final consolidation, everyone was excited to go like inner city nursing or like med surg nursing. And obviously, all of my top choices were like home care, inner city, hospital work. And I got my last choice on the list, and I was so upset. And it was a long term care placement at the Leap Center, um,
Yeah.
Ottawa. And I just absolutely loved it.
Right. And same for me too. I never got anything that I chose in my placements, but I ended up in long term care as well for my final placement. And I ended up working there for like 2 years afterwards. But yeah, it was, I think coming, like if you're coming from community, like you said, in a palliative role to long term care, it's definitely a different world of nursing.
100%.
Yeah. Um, for myself, because I actually worked as a PSW or healthcare aide for several years before deciding to take nursing. A lot of my experience was in retirement homes. So, working with patients that were more able bodied, but, definitely not limited to, we saw lots of palliative patients, things like that. Of course, we have a shortage of beds. So, residents that should technically be in long term care can't get placement. So then they're forced into retirement homes. But yeah, when I got my final placement for school, they put me at the Pearly Rideau Veterans Health Center, which is now known as Pearly Health. And yeah, I worked on this one unit. My preceptor was so good. She like really whipped me into shape. And yeah, I loved it there. I actually ended up getting a job there right after my preceptorship, and I worked there all through the pandemic up until July of 2021, I guess. So I was at the Pearly for about 2 years. And, it was never the Pearly that gave me a negative feeling, but just COVID was such a heavy, hard thing to deal with as such a new grad nurse.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that I I feel that in a way we're blessed that we were thrown to the weeds right at the beginning of our nursing career, and taught how to deal with all of the infection prevention control, things like that. I mean, obviously you learn that in school, but you don't really, it's not something you really focus on. It becomes a daily practice in nursing, but
Mm,
when you're so afraid to get sick, it really like weighs on your emotions.
100%. And I think even getting other people sick, like working in long term care at that time.
Yeah, that's just it. Like I was afraid when I was off my shift. I worked a full-time day line, and I was afraid to like go to McDonald's for dinner at 5 p.m. because I was afraid I was going to bring COVID into one of my residents.
Yeah. There was a huge fear factor that I think it was legit. Like, obviously, we don't want to get people sick, and at that time, it was a big time. Like, go through the long term care homes in Ottawa, and like
Yeah.
people were losing their lives. Um, but it was super hard because like we're like new nurses, and you don't have that chance to like socialize and like meet other professionals because everyone would just go home at night, and like your employer, because I don't think they're able to do this, and they didn't explicitly say it, but there was a lot of like implicit, like you're to just like go home and like do nothing and like isolate.
Yeah. So, one of the policies that were implemented during the pandemic was, like something as small as like if you're riding public transit, you can't wear your uniform home, which technically you shouldn't really do anyway. But yeah, like I totally agree. I'm sitting here like shaking my head, like, yes, yes, yes. Like I couldn't agree more with everything you're saying. Um, but anyway, I feel like it was a blessing in disguise, the pandemic, but that's for another episode. Um,
We could talk like so much about that.
right, right, right. So, Joe, what did you do after your final placement? You were in hospital. You lost those two patients. You took the palliative route.
Yep. And it kind of, it's funny because it's not like I took the palliative care route and I was doing the home care, and then when COVID hit, obviously I went full time to long term care because
Yeah,
they continue to work only at one place, which is also another episode because that was huge because
right.
just the politics around nursing is a lot of nurses have two or three jobs, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's hard to secure like a full-time line because places don't want to pay benefits. Like
yeah.
it's just awful.
Oh, it's crazy, and you have people who are trying to make a life, and you have you meet a lot of nurses who have families as well, and they're
Yeah.
just short. But yeah, and another time we can talk about that for sure. But yeah, going into this whole palliative care thing, I actually had no idea what it was, but I just knew that like two people had lost their lives, and it hit me hard that like I was the last person with these people when they had died. So I was like, I wonder, even more than a nurse, like as a person, what could I do to like help that? And then we talked about palliative care, so I was kind of interested, and I kind of got thrown in. And what I learned very quickly was everything that you learn in school is very, very like beneficial for you to use and like utilize, but nothing goes further than just like human connection and talking with someone,
Absolutely.
right? And like connecting with like the family. And I find as new nurses, we're so excited to go in there and be like, I know like your blood vessels are vasodilating right now, and like we want them to like constrict because it's going to save you and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But in reality, it's just people need someone there for them. And you can care for them so effectively by getting to know them and then like just being with them. And that was kind of a journey that I'm still on to this day. And it took me through doing the home care at the beginning, the long term care, and then I needed a break of long term care. After we got hit with COVID, I was like the charge nurse of a COVID unit after a year of being a nurse. And that's just because we had no staff at all.
Hmm.
I'm not saying like I was a charge nurse being like I knew absolutely everything and I was running that whole facility. It's like I was kind of like the bench warmer, and they're like, "Hey, like time for you to like come on this unit and then lead it," because three other nurses already got COVID.
That's crazy that they just threw you in as a
Oh, it was
brand new grad.
oh, it was crazy, and like no one wanted to work on that unit anyways. And like what I had said was pretty much everyone who we work with, and I'm assuming it's kind of the same for you at the Pearly, they had families, like they were going home to kids, they were going home to multiple like generations, their kids, and then they're also taking care of their family. So I could get why they didn't want to work on the unit that was plagued with COVID.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of like stepped up, but it was funny because we were so short staffed, Leanne. Like I was I was the charge nurse, and my PSWs were like they were like helpers, like a lot of them, like they were just kind of there and saying like, what do we do? And we had to like teach a lot of them, and there was a few PSWs kind of like leading that show on the floor to help the people who were brand new. But we didn't have any staff whatsoever. There's people from kitchens, there's literally people that were like just family members of other people who like worked there, that they were like, hey, do you want to make some money, do you want to come in? And everyone was awesome. At the end of the day, we all came together and we all cared for these people, but it was super super draining. So ended up taking a little break, and then I was working at the hospital for a bit. Then I moved to Alberta, and then I did a whole other branch of nursing up in Alberta. Did the PCR testing
Hmm.
for COVID. Went to the Calgary Stampede. Did testing there. For those of you who don't know what the Stampede is, it's like this huge event that people in Calgary and people in Texas are like huge fans of, and you just get together and you drink all day, watch bull riding, and there's concerts and stuff.
Rodeo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it was great. Like, it was actually a lot of fun. We had to test people before they were going into like the concert and drinking area. And just went all over Alberta. Actually, went up to the Rockies, went all the way north, to some pretty cool places. And then I was just burnt out again. Like, I was super, super tired, and I was like, you know what? I need to take this season just to kind of relax and like work on me. So I did online school, trying to get some RN courses to become an RN. Did some other personal growth courses as well. Volunteered a lot just to give back to the community without having, this might sound like a joke, but without having the responsibility of going into a shift and being like, these, everyone relies on me. Like, not only the people I'm caring for, but like my PSWs and everyone else. Like, I was just kind of burnt out of like being a leader for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so yeah, now I'm doing casual nursing up in Nunavut. So I travel up to Nunavut every few months for contracts in small communities, and I provide services up there. And here we are today.
That's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You've literally like been all pretty well across Canada, and you've done like every, I don't want to say every kind of nursing, that's a bit extensive, but
Yeah, for sure.
um, you've definitely dipped your toe in quite a few fields, I should say.
I feel like I'm a Joe of all trades right now, but like an expert in anything. Like, if you want a poop routine, like, I'll get you on a good bowel routine. If some injections, I can do it, but yeah, it's been, I'm super excited. And now, like, me and Leanne both are actually in school to upgrade to RN. But
Yeah.
I also think it's really interesting the route that you take, Leanne, after you moved up from Ottawa.
Yeah. Um, so yes, I graduated nursing and then worked at the Pearly for 2 years. And then during this time, my boyfriend and I, we'd been trying to buy a house in Ontario, and we just couldn't do that. So,
Episode.
yeah, typical millennial problem here.
Yep.
But yeah, we decided that, many years before, we had lived out in Alberta and, unfortunately couldn't stay at the time, but it was always our dream to move back to Alberta. So, with the pandemic and, just like Joe, I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted, dragging my butt every day to get to work. We decided that we were going to relocate back to Alberta. So, the beginning of July of 2021, I gave in my 2 weeks and I took a month off to pack, get our shit together, and we moved out west. And we've been in Alberta ever since. We actually just bought a home here, finally settling in about a year later. Now, before I left Ontario, I obviously, you have to apply and do an ethics exam before transferring your license, blah, 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 all the political stuff. But I was applying for jobs on Indeed because, I didn't come here with a job in mind. I was just sort of applying for whatever came up on Indeed, trying to see if I could find something. I was mostly looking at long-term care because that was my background, and applying at a lot of the hospitals here. And I actually ended up landing a position as a nurse case manager for a home care company. So I've been working with Care at Home Services now for, I guess, about a year now. I am still in case management. I run a team of nurses, healthcare aides, and I oversee clients in both Calgary and Edmonton area. Um, yeah, I'm loving it. I think that, some days it's tough from stepping back from patient care, because that's obviously why I became a nurse in the first place, is to provide good patient care. But I think I still do that now. It's just presented in a different way.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. I
yeah.
think people don't realize the importance of case management and the actual role. And if there's like any nursing students listening to this, like that's like, they don't train you enough, especially even as like a LTC nurse, to be trained in like a leadership position, because you have to delegate staff, you have to train staff. Like, you are the person that people like actually go to.
Yeah.
which I think it's a super cool like position, especially for you, because like I think, obviously we've only been a nurse for 4 years, but like you said, what was it, about 7 years that you were a PSW before?
Yeah, I was a PSW for about, I'd say 4 to 5 years. I worked in a retirement home. So, I've seen my fair share of, resident complaints and dealing with tough families and dealing with great families. And yeah, I've definitely like pulled from my past experience to be able to help me like float through this role. But yeah, like you say, Joe, like there's no management teach education in school in nursing.
Yeah.
And it's really something that honestly is available to anyone who chooses to seek it out. But I think it definitely takes a tough person to deal with, tough families that, you were in the people business. And if someone's not happy, they're going to let you know.
Yeah, and it sounds so like underrated speaking about it, but I would say like that takes up, especially as like a LTC nurse, that takes up like 90% of the day. I would say, like dealing with like families, but then also like managing like care. Like some people, they're just like, you get some PSWs, you get some nurses, they've been in their own ways for so long, and they don't realize the negative impact that it could be having, and just like trying to like navigate that, and like trying to follow the like policies that are in place that are set by like the government, set by the College of Nurses, set by
Yeah.
the facility itself. And like, yeah, that's a whole other episode, because there's so many moving parts there that like you have to give like one up sometimes, because they just all contradict each other, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you lose sight of who really matters, which is the resident or patient that you're caring for.
Yeah, exactly. So where are you going next, Joe? What's the plan?
So I'm taking a well-deserved break for the next month. My first contract in Nunavut was in May, and I had done it. So I had, it's kind of a funny story. When I was getting onboarded, they told me, they were like, you know what, we recommend for your first trip up north, because it's an isolated, like an isolated island, pretty much.
Hmm.
They're like, just come up for like 1 month, take it easy, see how you like it, then come back, and then see, kind of gauge it from there where you want to go. So I said, okay, I'm available from May 1st to July 15th if you want to schedule me in around that time, thinking that they were just going to schedule me in for a month, but they ended up scheduling me in for that whole entire time. So I was up there for like 2.5 months. And it was like, let alone like the actual nursing was a lot different. On an island, the community that I was in had about 2,000 people, um, and it was completely different. Different.
Yeah.
Everything was different. Yeah, I don't want to say too much right now, because I would like to have an episode where we kind of like discuss about travel nursing and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I go into like the deep issues, and also the deep like benefits as well. But it was a lot. So I came back. I was kind of burnt out. I'm in a new place now, so just kind of relaxing and stuff. And yeah, like I'm just gonna be doing contracts until the new year. Since I moved to another province, I have to get all my registration again, and I don't feel like paying like a $300 like fee in September, and then paying another $300 fee in like winter. So I'm just gonna pay the one for next year. So then I'm gonna try to find a job out where I am.
Yeah.
Try to get like an acute hospital experience, actually. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then just do like double casual. I'll do casual at the hospital, then go up for like short contracts up north.
That's awesome. I love how flexible nursing is.
Oh, so
But sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry. No, no, that's all I had to say.
Like the fact that you can just take like 2 months of work full time and then take a full month hiatus.
Mm-hmm. So like, and the amount of money that you make down there, like actually allows you to come home, and then you're actually good for like a month or two, because
Yeah.
kind of like, and then whenever you leave, you still like, I still got two paychecks when I was back home. I'm still waiting for a paycheck, and I've been here for about 3 weeks now.
Yeah. Nice.
So it's super nice. And honestly, as nurses, like you will get burnt out, especially if you love your job and like love what you actually do, you will get burnt out. And
Yeah.
it it's almost like inevitable. I feel kind of lame because like my first year, while I was like at the long-term care I was working about 80 hours a week. Like
Wow.
it's like I was working 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at least 1 to 2 times a week.
That's crazy.
It was ridiculous that we didn't have staff. And what actually got me through that was every morning when I'd walk in, I'd be so exhausted. But then I remember seeing the residents as you come in and as you get them up in the morning, and like some of my best friends were actually the residents at the place that I worked, and that was like my whole social life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it made it better. That said, it also completely burns you out when you do that for like a year straight. And which essentially I did it from like March when the pandemic started to March to whenever I moved to Alberta, actually just working
Yeah.
full time. And then yeah, and you're not making like you make good money just because you work all the time. That said, you end up losing money when you do overtime because they start taxing you at a higher tax bracket, and you end
Right.
up making the same paycheck that you would make if you're doing like 40 hours versus like 80 hours.
Right. I found that too.
Did you guys get a lot of overtime at the Pirelli?
Yeah, I mean, they offered it pretty well every day. But going back to what you were saying about like how you were so exhausted, I couldn't agree more about how, it's really the residents that keep you going. But one thing I want to say is that I've come to realize that, healthcare has a lot of broken pieces to it. And, one great nurse can't change the whole country. So you need to put yourself and your mental health first.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was tough. I really struggled.
I remember you actually. I don't know who started the text, but you texted me while I was on vacay, and I think it was this was 2020. I actually think I was on my honeymoon in Alberta in the Rockies, and you were messaging me. We kind of had a good talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot, and yeah, honestly, like you need to prioritize your mental health because your mental health, out of all the nursing skills you have, like that is the one most beneficial skill you will have because you have people coming from all walks of life, all different struggles, and you need to like give your own energy to be able to be there and effectively like care for them. And this is like my own opinion because I
Mhm.
see a lot of nurses who've been doing this for a long time, like they're amazing nurses. And what you have to do to become a nurse for such a long time is you have to become blunted to like certain things. So I see nurses, they have all the skills down, and it's like amazing.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, their therapeutic communication and like building, a relationship with the residents and even their staff sometimes is sacrificed for the actual getting like the task done, which you also need, right?
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I find that's you know, the saying like nurses eat their young. I don't think it's necessarily that, older nurses are out to get the younger nurses. It's just that like you say these veteran nurses have been in the this career path for many many years and they've become hard to a lot of these emotions and us as new grads like we just want to give everything that we have and unfortunately we really can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that the pandemic has really like shown a lot of not just myself but a lot of other nurses and I know even for you Joe but has shown us that we can't give 100% all the time and if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
100%. Because at the end of the day, like and you know me, I think I've always been like this. Like I love the terms like therapeutic communication and like loving one another and like relationships.
right.
Like I realize at the I realize this, but I also still do it. Is that if someone needs a medication, like you have to give them the medication, or if they need like a treatment, like you can't just talk to them about it. Like you have to actually do it. And
Yeah.
whenever you have like 32 residents or even like 5 people in a hospital setting, you have to like you can't have relationships with everybody all the time in the sense of I can't go talk to Bob down the hall while someone else needs a medication, right? And then Bob's gonna need a medication. Then Sally needs her blood pressure checked or her insulin checked, right? Or her
Yeah.
blood sugar. So it
Yeah,
just
it's definitely like a fine balance between therapeutic communication, obviously treating the patients and, making sure that their needs are met. But, you know, it really does come down to good communication. And that's how you're going to get anything done in nursing, really.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the nurses that I look up to, she was actually I had like three different preceptors when I was doing my final clinical placement just because of all the drama there. But one of my preceptors, I look up to her so much because she is so efficient and she can get so much done. But she's one of those people that she'll say three words to you, and like you have a relationship with her right away, and like everybody loves her. The
Right.
resident here, and she was very good at her job. Like she was an amazing, or she is an amazing nurse. Um, and yeah, like it's a skill that obviously we're going to build for the rest of our careers and our lives too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, we're always learning something new in nursing. Not only is like technology changing, but, the way people communicate's changing. And, we have new medication and so many things changing day to day in nursing. We have different policies, and yeah, I mean, as a nurse, you definitely have to be adaptable.
100%. And then you have like on that note that you made, like with all the policies, you also have like people who are like speaking up now about pretty much like everything, right? So
Yeah,
you have to be like very, very strict on being well informed and like understanding where someone's coming from as well. And also
right.
like not being first to like blow someone off whenever like they actually say something to you. But it's just there's so many it's like super hard to keep it narrowed down to like one box because this is like our first kind of podcast and don't want to jump into all these issues right away, but it's like a whole multiverse of like these issues and like these things that we need to be aware of as nurses.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that this is a good first round of an episode, but we have so much more to say.
Yeah, like I feel like I kind of hear it whenever you're talking too, like kind of like holding back a bit because like we'll be on this podcast for like 3 hours talking about all the good stuff but then all the BS about like this field.
Right, this is the thing. We need to be selective, but this is why we're gonna try to continue with a topic for every episode. I mean, obviously we're gonna get off topic, that's no doubt, but really try to just stay in our lanes where we can. But anyway, this episode was fun. I'm so happy that we're doing this. And yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna try to come up with episodes. We don't know how often it's gonna be yet, but I'm thinking depending on our schedules, we can work something up so it can be kind of consistent. And yeah, like we're gonna be discussing everything, guys. So yeah, thanks for like tuning in if you tuned in, and Leanne, thanks for like just being here and being you. Love it.
Yeah, thanks, you too, Joe, and thanks for listening, guys.